Welcome, everyone, to the captive audience. It is the 18th of March. We're starting a few minutes late here, had some technical difficulties, but I think I've resolved those. And I hope I can stay on for the entire show here. But thank you for joining. Um, we have a lot of great news here today, important news, and some not so surprising news. So, the National Archives have released the JFK files, according to um, uh, Just the News. President Trump issued an executive order. It's about 80,000 pages, and people will be able to make up their own minds. One of the analyses that I've gotten to listen to basically said that there weren't a lot of surprises in it, um, and that perhaps there are some other documents more recently discovered that have not been included. So I don't know. Maybe the sensationalism of it uh, helps a little bit. But in the meantime, President Trump followed through on his promise that seemingly no other president seemed to be able to deliver on for a very long time, including President Brandon, uh, who fortunately no one's heard from for a while and may not hear from again. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe he's incapable of responding to anything. But kind of the big news here is that there's a battle going on back and forth between the judiciary, specifically the federal district courts, that liberal justices in the federal district courts, judges, and the Trump administration. This is the typical lawfare that we saw in 2017 during President Trump's first term, and it's an attempt in many cases by individual district judges to issue sweeping nationwide injunctions and ordering the executive branch to take actions that actually only the executive branch itself can take and are empowered to do under the President of the United States, the head of the executive branch. Courts can hear cases and make decisions, but there's a judge that I think we talked about yesterday that ordered that the planes carrying the Tren de Alagua gang members that departed the United States the other day, he ordered these planes to be returned to the United States mid-flight after they're out of U.S. airspace. And I believe it's mid-flight, but they landed at their destinations. And now this judge is running around claiming that he may issue contempt charges to the Department of Justice and the Trump administration. And so, you know, this is just feeding the Democrats who actually want to claim everything's unconstitutional and illegal and blah, blah, blah. But none of us can remember a judge during the Biden administration issuing restraining orders that, and then holding the Biden administration contempt successfully on anything, particularly the Biden administration deciding to deport people at the president's discretion. So this is once again going to be a battle that goes back and forth. Now, there is a member of Congress who's filed impeachment or is planning to file impeachment charges in the House against this Judge Boasma or whatever his name is. Anyway, and President Trump agrees with that, but Chief Justice John Roberts decided that the most important thing for him to do was to attack President Trump in the media about it. He could focus on getting the law right, or expediting the case from this lower court, which in many, many ways clearly has overstepped its bounds. So the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, there are judicial precedents that apply. And this is something, yes, I know President Trump stripped Hunter and Ashley. They're always supposed to have this protection until they're 16. It's been generously extended in the past to like maybe 18 years old of age for sons and daughters of presidents, but former presidents, I should say. But anyway, Hunter Biden and Ashley are in their 50s. So, yeah, they're not entitled to it anymore. And frankly, given what Hunter Biden did, he might want to go and sell some more paintings and see if he can get some security by paying for it with these paintings. Or he can go to the big guy who's squirreled away a lot of cash to go pay for his security. But I think everybody's tired of hearing about Hunter Biden. Anyway, back to this story. This is big because you've got the judiciary going and trying to order the executive branch in nearly every respect, telling them what to do. And, so John Roberts criticized the president for agreeing with something that he has no power to do. So it's silly for the Chief Justice to even say this. But here's what Roberts said. So Roberts said, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. A normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. And I don't disagree that a normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. But once you have a huge swath of judges literally interfering directly and extrajudicially, I believe, is what will be determined as it reaches appellate review in the operations of the executive branch, particularly with regard to the president's duties, which are not subject to judicial review, of assessing and ordering the U.S. government with regard to national security and foreign policy. And that is a precedent that has been established by the court system with regard to the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. And it specifically stated that there isn't judicial review of the decisions that the president makes under that act. Now, I guess we're going to see how this hashes out here. And Trump said, well, Roberts didn't mention my name, but many people have called for the impeachment of Boasberg, the judge. I don't know who the judge is, but he's radical left. He's Obama appointed. He actually shouldn't be able to take criminals, killers, murderers, horrible, the worst people, gang members, gang leaders that shouldn't be allowed to say that we shouldn't be allowed to take them out of the country. Well, that's a presidential job. That's not for a local judge to make that determination. And actually, it's the issue also of competency. Judges are not competent in making this decision. That is exactly what the executive branch and the president under the Constitution are charged with. So this battle is going to go back and forth on many issues. But you saw the article that I posted during yesterday's show, which was from the Babylon Bee, saying federal district judge orders astronauts return to the space station. So I think that just actually, that's where humor does us a great service of pointing out the truth of the matter here, which is that these judges actually don't have these wide sweeping authorities, and they do need to be reined back in. I think they'll be reined back in through the appellate process, but it's going to take a while. And so we've got to stay alert to this, because here's another one. Judge hands legal loss. Donald Trump handed legal loss as judge blocks transgender military ban. Federal Judge Anna Reyes blocked President Trump's executive order banning transgender individuals from military service, and she ruled that the directive likely violates the constitutional rights of transgender troops. apparently somewhere in the Constitution, it addresses the rights of transgender military personnel. So this is going to be fascinating because, this is an inane ruling. And she is delaying the enforcement of a ruling for 3 days, allowing the administration to appeal. I think this is not only going to get appealed, it's going to get tossed. And there is absolutely, positively no basis, not only in the Constitution for this ruling, but there is no reason why judges should be interfering in the operation and the conduct of the U.S. Armed Forces, period. There is no basis for it. So this constitutional rights garbage is only part of the story. And so, one thing that's not mentioned in this story that I just posted is what judge, who appointed this federal judge, Anna Reyes. I'm going to look that up right now because when they don't mention it in a liberal news outlet, it's almost always a Democrat appointed judge. And so here I'm going to go straight to, there's some listing on Bing, which takes you to Wikipedia. And it says here, she was nominated to the position by President Joe Biden, is both the first Latina and openly LGBT person to serve as a district judge in Washington, D.C. There you go. So not only is this judge potentially easily viewed as biased with regard to this, given this recognition of this status that she has as a judge, but she was appointed by Joe Biden and the media leaves that out. By the way, she was born in 1974 in Montevideo, Uruguay. So expect more crap from this person, probably getting involved with immigration enforcement as well. Yes, yesterday's show was hosted by a leprechaun, and that leprechaun then actually proceeded to enjoy a couple of Guinnesses and on St. Patrick's Day. So thank you for joining me yesterday. I really appreciate it. By the way, Anna Reyes, the federal judge, went to Transylvania University. So I don't know. I mean, go figure. Anyway, and so now we've got judges interfering in the operation of the executive branch left and right. And someone's got to rein them in. The Supreme Court is going to have to actually get involved with this at some point, because if they just allow federal district judges to take over and interfere with the legitimate operation of the executive branch, and particularly when it comes to national security and foreign policy, and judicial precedents that already exist that rule out their ability to interfere with that, then the Supreme Court's got to do its job. And that's what Justice John Roberts should be focused on. And if he's really concerned about that, he should expedite it, because frankly, we can't. And I think at some point the president will have to ignore these rulings in order to make sure that national security and foreign policy of the United States are conducted. And then the Supreme Court can go ahead and say what they want. I imagine Democrats plan to impeach President Trump later if they ever get enough power to do so anyway. So who cares? I think this is where you have to say, look, the President of the United States does not have to take orders from district judges on foreign policy and national security. Now a judge is blocked the dismantling of the USAID by DOJ. And this is another judge who, let me see if I can find if they mention anything about who this judge is. Not seeing his name in here, but one guess who this guy is. Anyway, it was some employees of USAID, and they say that the government, the Trump administration, has argued that dismantling USAID fits well within the president's authority to conduct foreign affairs. USAID is specifically an agency designed to advance the foreign policy interests of the United States by issuing developmental grants. And of course, they found many, many grants and contracts that had nothing to do with advancing the foreign policy of the United States. It was advancing woke policies of the Brandon administration, and they have been summarily terminated. Not all programs have been terminated, but USAID as an entity is now under the direct authority of the Secretary of State, who is the acting USAID director. U.S. District Judge Theodore Chuang is the gentleman who has issued this order, and he says that it's unconstitutional, which is fascinating. So anyway, the federal government is appealing this decision. He's trying to order, get this, he has ordered Elon Musk and Doge to reinstate access to USAID workers and contractors to USAID systems, and not to take any further action relating to placing employees on leave, firing workers, or terminating contracts. So literally, this judge has now appointed himself as being in charge of USAID, not the acting USAID director, the Secretary of State, not the President of the United States conducting foreign policy, but this judge. And he said that the federal government will appeal the decision. There hasn't been a response yet. But this literally was a giant slush fund for Democrats and political operations, and it was rightly terminated and so anyway, here's what the judge has said. The judge has said that let me just see here. I know I found it in the original article. He said that they would be able to. He gave a circumstance under which this decision could be ratified by the acting USAID director, who is the Secretary of State. And I'm trying to find where it stated this. Here we go. The judge said that government officials must prepare the building USAID headquarters formerly occupied in Washington for the agency if there's a final ruling in favor of the plaintiffs. That requirement will be stayed if the USAID acting administrator or another official within the authority to do so on behalf of USAID submits to the court a ratification of the decision to close the offices. So that's what they're saying. I think this is where the Democrats are trying to force the issue of whether the president has authority, if Doge has the authority, if somebody who's been U.S. Senate confirmed, such as the Secretary of State, who's now the acting director of USAID, has the authority. But it goes round and round and round and round. And by the way, let me see if I can find where this some information about this judge, because once again, I suspect, yeah, he's kind of looking like, let me just see here. A United States District Court judge, making it really, appointed by Barack Obama. There you go. Another fruitcake, who is interfering with the legitimate operations of the executive branch. This is going to go on and on and on and on. And if judges continue to do this after what I believe will be some clear rulings by the U.S. Supreme Court on this, or at least a ruling by the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, and then sustained by or not heard by the U.S. Supreme Court, that sustains the president's power on this, judges should be impeached if they actually start ignoring those rulings and issuing these widespread injunctions. So again, this is just going to keep happening with these morons. And we're just going to have to keep pushing back on it and President Trump is pushing and testing this. Here's some good Hunter Biden news, just to throw in with that other news that you heard. The whistleblowers who blew the whistle on Hunter Biden and the Biden cover up of what these IRS agents found those guys have gotten promoted by the Trump administration. They were originally retaliated against by the Biden administration. And so this is important news, because not only is this poetic justice, but actually this is what we should do with people who do the right and the smart thing, to hold government accountable. And so it's Gary Shapley and IRS Special Agent Joseph Ziegler, and they will now serve as senior advisors to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. It's quite a promotion, and frankly, that should leave some IRS people that were in the tank for Biden a little concerned. And more power to them. Congratulations, gentlemen. Justice is being done, and they should fully investigate the retaliation by the IRS and the previous Department of Justice, and hold those people accountable, especially if there's any criminal wrongdoing. Prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. Let's see here. FBI has handed over the Biden era weaponization scandal documents of how the FBI was weaponized, and these are documents that former FBI Director Christopher Wray stonewalled congressional Republicans when they were seeking answers on the weaponization of the Bureau. Kash Patel, starting his term of office as the FBI director, has started off on the right foot as he promised, and turned those documents over. And so the FBI Assistant Director Marshall Yates has sent a letter to Jim Jordan on Friday, vowing that under Director Kash Patel's leadership, the FBI is dedicated to working with Congress towards transparency, something that we couldn't count on under the prior administration. And the deep state was covering this type of stuff up pretty handily during the Trump administration to prevent anyone from finding out the truth of what was really going on under Comey and later Christopher Wray. So that era is over. This wanted to return to a story I talked about yesterday. The auto pen that was used to sign bills and pardons. Dershowitz, Alan Dershowitz, the constitutional law professor, who openly admits that he has been voting and still votes for Democrats, but has pushed back on the effort by the previous administration to get Trump, as his book put, and he put it. And he also defended President Trump during the first impeachment in front of the Senate. He said that this issue will end up in court. An auto pen would raise a real problem if he signed it by auto pen, which is not a real signature. So he's calling this into question, and he's not calling it into question because he's in the tank for President Trump. He's just he's talking about whether bills that the president supposedly signed or the pardons he signed were signed by auto pen. And he goes to the Constitution. He says that it must be signed by the president, not auto penned by the president, and that it would present a real problem. It's not a real signature. Now, pardons, it doesn't say anything about signing it. It says he shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons. So I think the people who try to sustain the pardons would argue, look, he can pardon orally. Therefore, it doesn't matter whether you use the pen. But it will raise the issue, did he actually pardon? Or did someone else write the signature without really getting approval from President Biden? There are mental health issues there. Did he approve the pardon? And if he did, probably the nature of the signature won't matter, I guess, is what he's saying. So this is an interesting issue, and one that the Oversight Project has explored, which is to go and figure out just how many things were signed by Joe Biden with an auto pen, and then Joe Biden didn't know he signed it. So, we're going to get to the bottom of this, but if that means poor Anthony Fauci doesn't have a pardon after all, then golly jeepers, that's just too bad. He might have to face the full consequences for the things he did and said in the recent years. 5 states are considering requiring voter ID to stop non-citizen voting and boost election security. Only about half of the states in the United States require photo ID, voter photo ID, and just 15 explicitly prohibit non-citizen voting. Just 15. Um, and so the 5 states that are looking at this are Iowa, Maine, Michigan, Utah, and Wisconsin. And of those 5, um, actually, Maine to some extent, because of one of its congressional districts and its electoral college allocation system, um, and then Iowa, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Those states are all swing states. Utah is not, but still, this is actually an important step forward. 77% of U.S. likely voters believe that requiring photo ID to vote is a reasonable measure to protect election integrity. 77%. Now, 35 states, as of last November, require voters to present a form of identification to cast their ballots. Some states have exceptions. Of the 35 states, 23 require voters to present photo ID, with some exceptions. 12 do not explicitly require it. There are 15 states do not require voter ID to vote in person on election day. They could literally be anybody and just say their name when they come in. Thousands of non-citizens, of course, as we know, were discovered on the voter rolls last year. And while non-citizens are prohibited from voting in federal, state, and most local elections, the states of California, Maryland, Vermont, and Washington, D.C. allow non-citizens to vote in local elections. And there is the approval of ballot measures to ban non-citizen voting happened in 8 states last year. So there are now 15 states in total that allow only U.S. citizens to vote in elections: Alabama, Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Idaho, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Missouri, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Wisconsin. Something noticeable about all of these states: they were won by President Trump in the recent election. And so I just gave you some details. But you can read more in this article, and it's time that we get to the bottom of what's going on with our election system. Because here in Oregon, they discovered not only several thousand non-citizens that were on the rolls, but and they did not have a way to stop it from happening. And then they did an assessment, which was reported to be nearly 54,600 voters could not prove actually were American citizens by any means in the Oregon election system. So this is a problem we have here too. On the foreign policy front, just want to quickly mention that President Trump and Vladimir Putin have agreed to what's called a limited ceasefire. At least they're seeking to have a limited ceasefire to try and build some good faith and create an impetus for negotiations to move forward. It is a ceasefire where the Russians will not attack, nor will the Ukrainians, I assume, a energy and infrastructure ceasefire on energy and infrastructure. They want to have it lead to a maritime ceasefire where each other's shipping will not be attacked. I don't know. It seems like this could go somewhere. Obviously, there's good reason to be skeptical of what Vladimir Putin's going to do. Somebody actually said that we're on the 10th yard line of Russian-Ukrainian peace. So that means we got a lot to go. But while everybody's been on the left, and particularly the Biden administration, people have been attacking the effort to see if they can't bring this war to a stop and end the hostilities. A lot of us remember when the Democrats used to call for that all the time in every war. And now apparently they're really into having an endless war in Ukraine. They love it. The only ceasefire that they like is the one that they demanded Israel submit to with regard to Hamas and the Gaza Strip. Of course, interestingly enough, that ceasefire ended up only happening once President Trump was in office. So there you go. the new Democrat Party, finding the wrong side on every issue and doubling down on it. Good job. Here's some important news today, and it kind of leads into some of our local, our state level news. I love it. Yeah, what you said about the Daily Wire. I'll see if I can't find that. But yeah, if he's vacationing in the U.S. Virgin Islands and they don't have any proof that he authorized anything while he was there, Joe Biden asleep on the beach can't give authorization to and sign documents. But anyway, yeah, and recently my highest number of reporting to work was 49 out of over 2,000. Your tax dollars asleep. Yeah, I know. It's a reality. And of course, the Democrats are going to get some judge to say you can't fire people for not showing up to work ever. Maybe that judge should just not show up to work and see how long they get to remain in that position. Anyway, NASA astronauts splashed down in the Gulf of America off the Florida coast after an assist from Musk's SpaceX. And I saw some headlines from the left-leaning outlets, and it's fascinating because the left-leaning outlets tried to say crucial victory for battered Musk in bringing astronauts back from space. What the real story should be is not only the success of Elon Musk doing this, but it should be two other things. One is, why were they left in space last year when Elon Musk himself said we had the ability to bring them back last year? And the answer that Elon Musk himself gave is that it was politics, and that the Biden administration explicitly did not want to do it because they did not want Elon Musk to look like a hero for bringing them back in the middle of the election time. So these people were sacrificed for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's political fortunes. And all I can say is I got to hear one of the people that returned praise President Trump and Elon Musk for helping them come back. I believe that was Butch Wilmore. And by the way, the other astronaut, Sunny Williams. Yep, that's right. Spelled the same way our Sunny Danforth is, S-U-N-I. But they were stranded on this space station. They went up for an 8-day visit, and the Boeing vessel that took them up then therefore could no longer safely be trusted to bring them back. And they ended up staying there for over 300 days, stranded in space by the Brandon administration. So, this is really a moment that you just can't make this one turn into something that makes the Democrats look good. But the Democrats tried anyway, because apparently the brother of Mark Kelly, his twin brother, who's an astronaut as well, former astronaut, it was claiming that they had a way to come back to the Earth the entire time, and that all of this is one big exaggeration. Really? Well, then what we should do is send you up to the space station. I think Elon Musk would be happy to send you up there, or somebody, maybe the Russians, because they're probably a big fan of yours now, and then you take that ship back. I think that's a great solution. You're an astronaut, so eat your own dog food. I'm serious. I just think if somebody's going to go lie to people that way, when it was clear that the Biden administration said they couldn't bring them back and they shouldn't bring them back, and NASA, administrated by Joe Biden's NASA administrator, former U.S. senator, who I'm not even sure really I don't know. He didn't seem to be thoughtfully engaged in what he was doing anymore there either. Said it was too dangerous. So you go argue with them, okay? Because that was reporting for an entire year. And the fact that Elon Musk did it is the thing that bothers the hell out of the Democrats. And that's sickening. Meanwhile, in other news, the attacks on Tesla dealerships have continued. There was one, I believe, in Missouri, one somewhere on the East Coast. There was, as we know, the one in Salem. There was one in Portland. Windows were shot out. I drove past it. It's off 217 in Beaverton. And then there's video of the Tesla dealership, a Tesla dealership in Las Vegas, where somebody was um, setting ablaze and set literally this entire dealership on fire in Las Vegas. And there's video of this, and it was a targeted dealership. And by the way, I heard in one of the attacks, and I don't know which one it was, the attacker was one of those typical trans Tifa types, which is like a transgender, multiple identity Antifa type, who decided to go and try to attack by the way, Joe is in outer space, and he doesn't even have to leave Earth. Joe Biden. Now this is another trans Tifa type, which we've seen this pattern before, but I think that what's going to be different here is that the FBI is all over this. And actually, if you want to watch this video, you can. There's also the FBI report that shows the entire story of what happened, and so have a look at this. It's really an explanation of what took place in the entire attack and how they're going after these guys. And it has hallmarks of, let's see, what do they say here? Of terrorism. And look, if people are going to do this, then they actually have to make an example of these folks. And by the way, I do think it's appropriate if somebody tries to engage in a terrorist attack on a Tesla dealer, they get the hell shot out of them if they try to while they are in the process of trying to do that. Like, that's what security should do. And don't attack property and endanger lives ultimately by lighting fires and attacking a Tesla dealerships or any place that. And by the way, this rationale could literally extend to anything that the left doesn't like and has in the past. And we have to throw the book at them. And that anybody they talk to who coordinated with them, that engaged in any conspiracy or assisted them in any way, materially, or provided direction to them, should be brought up on charges too. And take them down, bring them all down, and then march them out, make sure everybody sees them. Because, and of course, there's a lot of cyber trucks and Tesla vehicles that are getting vandalized in and around towns in the U.S. Kansas City, there were some cyber trucks that were attacked. And Democrats are openly demanding that, and of course, they're not waiting for judges to go and adjudicate any of these cases that we were talking about. They're like engaged in violence, interference, attacks, terrorism, and they literally are trying to attack the company Tesla itself, which is fascinating to me because I see this story. It says Oregon and 9 other states hit the 2013 goal of getting 3.3 million electric vehicles on the road by 2025. So it's like 9 states together. The fascinating thing about this article is it goes through and it talks about all the things they did and all the programs they put into place. But ultimately, most of these electric vehicles would have to be Teslas, given the absolute number of sales that have taken place. And they went way out of their way to make sure that wherever they could show that they didn't mention Tesla in this article at all. So the Democrats' goal would be jeopardized if they had to admit that was done by quality electric vehicles manufactured by Tesla and not the junkers that nobody wanted to buy. And unfortunately, Ford was manufacturing, and then and other makers for which there are no electric EV charging stations. So fascinating. In further Oregon news, an Oregon Republican lawmaker, state representative, while a so-called book ban bill was being considered, uh, went and read from some of the books that school boards and local school officials want to remove from school, that Democrats are trying to ban the ability to remove. He was reading passages from one of the books that the Democrats say cannot be removed, and he was reading it aloud uh, in on the floor of the legislature, and it was detailing an explicit sex scene that is apparently okay for young children to read, but not okay if you ask the Democrats on the floor of the state legislature. And he actually noted that as he was reading this section into the record, for consideration of this bill, he said, "I want to highlight the rules on the floor forbidding profane and indecent language, but it's okay for children to use profanities and language in public schools because this book is provided to them in the library." This is Dwayne Yunker. And he read more than half a minute of this consensual sex scene before a member of his own party, Representative Kevin Mannix of Salem, objected, calling what Yunker was saying lascivious and obscene. But that wasn't the end of it. Representative David Gomberg, a Democrat from Otis, was presiding over the floor's proceeding, allowed Yunker to continue speaking, reminding him that language being used here on the floor is not simply heard here on the floor, but it's heard by everyone listening of all ages and a variety of sensitivities. Gomberg later said that he could not clearly hear what Yunker was saying. Yeah, freaking liar. Anyway, Yunker continued to read the explicit passage aloud until he was again stopped by Mannix, his fellow Republican, and did not read anymore. Yunker then cited examples of teachers in Oregon sexually abusing children and cited a 2019 report in which Oregon had the highest rate of sex offenders of all states. Meanwhile, we continue to allow the distribution of sexually explicit materials to children, which normalizes such behaviors. There's increasing focus on the authorship of books rather than evaluating whether or not the content is appropriate for young readers. The Republican leader, Christine Drazan, agreed with him. He said, "What we heard today was in fact indecent. It was not appropriate for the House floor, and it's important to recognize that it should not have been confusing. What is on the shelves of our schools today does not meet the standards for this chamber. Our families, our students deserve to go to school and have libraries that are appropriate for their age." Of course, Julie Fahey, a Democrat from Eugene, who's the House Speaker, denounced the Republicans' protest. You know, the party of protesting doesn't like having the truth shoved in their face, and likened the tactics to Marjorie Taylor Greene and President Trump. She said, "Until now, I think we've held ourselves to a higher standard in Oregon. So to me, it was really a shame to see House Republicans bring those theatrics to our chamber." Yeah, Democrats don't know anything about theatrics. Literally, people expletive-laden rants in committee hearings in D.C. Maxine Waters storming storming the Housing and Urban Development building with protesters. Theatrics, they invented theatrics. I wouldn't listen to them for 5 seconds on garbage like this. And I think Julie Fahey said, "I think reasonable people can have conversations about what is the best policy for our children, but what is the best policy for our education system without these Trump-style gimmicks, where the truth is supplied to people while they're debating a bill for which this is primary and materially relevant." So I think the Democrats should pay a severe price next year in elections, as they have decided to once again double down for something that they should go ahead and poll people, and people should be polled with the passages cited in mind, and then ask people, is this appropriate for school-age children, or should schools be allowed to remove these materials? I think they know what the result's going to be. They're literally just trying to get it through. Now, Oregon Education Reform Act was introduced, and I want to tell you what that is. That is something that roughly mirrors some ballot initiatives that in the past would bring fundamental reform to our education system, and specifically try to address the fact that we continue to fall to last place in the United States. Fourth graders who were tested in 2024 ranked worst in the country and tied with 10 other states for the third worst in reading. And they talked about how the system is broken and failed, and that this bill, SB 1100, would allow school districts the choice of where to place feminine sanitary products. They'd like the school districts to do that, not have it ordered by the state. Provide an income tax credit for teachers in rural school districts, which, okay. Requires public schools, community colleges, and public universities to provide instruction in a neutral manner without favor to political groups. Requires school districts to designate athletic competitions and extracurricular sports to a biological sex. Provide school resource peace officers in every district. Ensure licensee pathways to bolster career and technical education. Forbid the OHA from requiring COVID-19 immunizations for school attendance. And a list of other items here that kind of bring into line with what the people of the state of Oregon and frankly across the country want to see the education system be involved with. But ultimately, it would also provide an income tax credit for families that homeschool or pay private school tuition with proof of attendance and passing grades that is equal to the local general purpose grant for ADM and ORS 327013. So in other words, it's to make income tax credit available to families that want to pursue other options to make sure their kids can read and do math. And so it's also transparency on curriculum. It's transparency on student grades for parents and guardians. It names a number of important things, and I think this is something we should keep in mind and try to at least highlight to people the contrast. By the way, there's today or this Thursday is going to be the deadline for filing for school board. And I saw here, Lori, you took the parent test after last night's show. Great. Share it with a bunch of parents. Just post it everywhere. And please let everyone know they can go to prescores with an S.com and which also will post here again, takes you to this and allows anybody to take this and become part of the movement. But also it's an opportunity for somebody who wants to maybe identify themselves as a candidate or potential candidate. We have until Thursday, 5 p.m. if people want to step up and take action on this. Let's see. I'm going to just mention two more stories here. Apparently, government workers who consider themselves in charge of running the state, regardless of what you think, held a rally to lay out a new tax plan. And that tax plan is designed they want to tax the rich, they say, and then use those funds to fuel all of the projects and the plans they have. And you should take a look at this because this is, they've already been taxing what they consider the rich, which is grocery stores. They think grocery stores are rich, even though they have a 1% to 2% profit level. They like to tax gas stations and make your gas prices go up. And of course, the corporate activities tax is a 3% surcharge on transactions that hits small businesses. And if they pass it on to their customers, it creates inflation. If they can't, it damages those businesses and forces them eventually out of the state. So I think this is something to raise people's awareness of. Please do that. I've just posted it there. And the last story I want to cover tonight, I'm sorry for running long, but I also started late. I understand. Governor Tina Kotek she is apparently, the Oregonian is noting that she's been largely silent about the Trump presidency. And they're questioning whether this approach will pay off. And so they analyze this and they compare it with what Governor Kate Brown did. Um, she gave her 2017 inaugural speech as governor because she was reelected after succeeding Governor Kitzhaber when he resigned in 2015. She was elected in 2016, and she gave an inaugural speech that basically declared, here in Oregon, thousands have fought for and demanded equality. We cannot and will not retreat. It was basically an anti-Trump speech. Kotek has taken a different path so far, and stuck to her priority issues and her message. Now, she's responded to some things about Trump, and there's some of these statements mentioned here. But this is analysis of whether or not this is a politically smart approach. I don't know. I know that they want to have money, and they know that the Trump administration is not going to be funding stuff that falls outside of the purview and the confines of of the Trump administration policies. But there's also a lot of money that still comes from the federal government for various programs, and probably some concerns about transparency here in the state and what they're going to find what money's been actually used for. And I think tonight there's a Hannity interview with Elon Musk where he talks about how they have found, they've been exploring and finding over and over and over nonprofits that have received enormous sums of money from the federal government, who then have pretty well-paid members of staff living large off of these funds, where they all claim to be doing something that the Biden administration thought was super awesome. Could be with regard to illegal immigrants, or climate justice, or transgender rights, or whatever. And they're starting to look at all these nonprofits, which are a great way to hide from transparency, public transparency, the nature of what's being done with the money that's being given to and spent by nonprofits. And I really think that if you take money from a government entity, all of the money you spend is then subject to FOIA requests. If you don't want to be subject to FOIA requests and you're a nonprofit, don't take money from the government. Simple as that. Now, that doesn't mean your donors necessarily would have to be revealed. That's a different thing with nonprofits. But when the government is a contributor to your operations, in a way, you almost cease being a private nonprofit, and you are a public nonprofit. And there should be new rules promulgated for that. And it should happen soon, by the way, because we know that those are rampant in the state of Oregon, too. And that should apply to money that federal money that eventually goes through states and counties and cities to these nonprofits. It's time for the nature of that spending to be revealed, because instead of having the government do it itself, Democrats have been giving it to nonprofits. They made some of these nonprofits enormously wealthy and powerful. Those nonprofits have turned around and spent money supporting Democrats, advancing their message, and the jig is up. We're done with it. The end of that must now happen. Anyway, I'm just throwing out a policy advocacy idea. I think it's time to pursue that, and that regular nonprofits that actually take private donations should continue to enjoy at least a degree of privacy for the people that donate to it, so they can, follow through on their good works. Now, if those nonprofits engage in something like, I don't know, funding Antifa and helping people burn Tesla dealerships, well, different story. Time for those nonprofits to be fully subject to transparency and investigation. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining me here tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to watch and listen, and please share this show with everyone you can. Remember, 5 o'clock March 20th is the deadline to file for school board. All this stuff we talked about that's happening to and with our schools in this state. We can do something about it. We just need parents to step up, run for school board, and help the Trump administration, who's doing stuff from the top down, be helped by those of us in our cities and locales that want help from the bottom up. Anyway, have a great night, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Captive Audience. Should be Sunny and Dawn tomorrow night.